This video was brought to you by Magic Spoon. My friends, I'm having an issue. I'm finding it increasingly difficult to get through my day without having at least one bowl of Magic Spoon cereal. I genuinely can't get enough of this stuff. And here's the thing, Magic Spoon is super tasty, just like the sugary cereals I used to eat, but it's got 0 grams of sugar and only 4 to 5 net grams of carbs. Even more, it is packed with protein with 13 to 14 grams per serving. It's also gluten-free, grain-free, and has no artificial colors or sweeteners. Magic Spoon not only hits the spot as a sweet, delicious snack, but it's something I can genuinely feel good about eating. And so I do eat it. Kind of a lot. If you want to try out a variety pack of Magic Spoon, hit the link down in the description. Use the code ARLO or simply head to magicspoon.com/Arlo or scan this handy QR code and you will get $5 off your order. Just be warned, you might get hooked. Terrifying. It's E3 2012. Nintendo is gearing up to launch the Wii U in the upcoming holiday season. We're in that crazy fun pre-launch hype season, and they're showing us all the games that we'll be playing on our Wii U's. They've revealed Pikmin 3, so naturally I'm riding pretty high. You know, that was enough for me. But 2D Mario fans are in for a treat as well, because new Super Mario Bros. U is revealed as a launch title. This is exciting because it feels like a chance for Mario to really do something interesting in this shiny new era of HD Nintendo games. See, the new Super Mario Bros. Games had been really well received up to that point, but it seemed that most people were hoping for some kind of new development. The first game was very by-the-numbers Mario, but that was okay because it was the first new 2D Mario in ages. Then Nintendo gave us new Super Mario Bros. Wii, which was pretty much the same thing, but with multiplayer. And hey, multiplayer Mario, that was new. That was a thing that had not really existed up to that point, so okay, we can work with that. But then they gave us the confusingly titled New Super Mario Bros. 2, not 3, really did make the Wii one feel even more like the same thing but multiplayer. But whatever. And 2, as it turned out, was pretty much the same thing, except you get a bunch of coins. They don't do anything, but coins. None of these games were bad, but I could tell that everyone was ready for a new Super Mario Bros. Game that actually felt new. I mean, for a series with new in the title, it was starting to feel like the oldest fashioned series Nintendo had. And that was why, when Nintendo revealed their new Wii U Mario game, all eyes were on this level right here. Painted Swampland. It featured a beautiful painterly background, clearly inspired by Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night. Even the foreground elements looked like they were painted. The whole thing was just beautiful, and this right here, this was something new. This was a level of artistic flair that we had never seen in a 2D Mario. And everybody wondered if this right here was a good sign, if this was a sign of the creativity we would see on display in the full game. Then the game came out. And it turned out this new Super Mario Bros. Game was the same thing again, except with a little sibling mode and a squirrel suit. And it turned out that level, nah, that was it. That was it! The art style was only used for that one single level, and no other level featured anything even almost as beautiful or unique. That Painted Swampland was a one-and-done anomaly, and it was baffling. That was over 10 years ago, and yet this whole time, Painted Swampland has been very emblematic of an issue we have seen Mario struggle with. Sometimes Mario games exhibit incredible creativity, both mechanically and visually, but all too often, Nintendo seems to fall back on this idea that Mario's nostalgia factor is so important that they shouldn't be too creative or they'll risk alienating some fans. They feel that Mario needs to maintain a certain simple purity. You know, the world of Mario should act as a snapshot of the first handful of games and not introduce too many new elements. And sometimes I get where they're coming from. Super Nintendo World is largely one of those snapshots. You won't find any obscure fan favorite characters here. This is Mario, Yoshi, Toads, Koopas, warp pipes, coins, you know, that kind of stuff. And this makes sense. This place is a celebration of Mario. You want everyone who walks in to be able to connect with the imagery, you know? This is Mario at its most basic. But when this basic, classic snapshot Mario keeps finding its way into games, that's when it's harder to take. Of course, there are the 4 nearly identical New Super Mario Bros. Games, which seemed all the more plain when other developers were making truly beautiful and innovative platformers, some of which were on the very same systems Mario was on. But then, I know it's a bit of a controversial opinion, but Super Mario 3D World feels to me like another pretty good example of Mario being way too plain. It's a great game, and I've come to like it quite a lot more over the years, but going from sun-baked Isle Delfino with its tropical vibes, its bustling city filled with interesting races and loads of interplay between gobs of splashing water and mud and colorful goop, going from that to stinkin' space with its countless surreal planets, bizarre gravity-shifting mechanics, strange little star spirit people and space bunnies, its fairy tale story and its grandiose orchestral score, to go from that to catsuit, Bowser in a car. I couldn't help but feel disappointed. 3D World just doesn't have a super strong identity. It's not as plain as new Super Mario Bros. Games, but it's not too far off. Then, of course, we've got the biggest offender. Poor little Paper Mario. Someone at Nintendo, we don't know exactly who, decided that Paper Mario had to be the ultimate snapshot. According to an interview with producer Kensuke Tanabe, the developers had to work under a set of rules enforced by some mysterious department of Nintendo. These were literal rules dictating that only classic Mario races were allowed. There was a hard limit on how much they could be visually altered, and new elements and characters had to come from so far outside the Mario universe that they didn't really fit. Developing or expanding upon classic Mario stuff was against the rules. This was all disturbing to learn. And it was particularly disturbing to me as someone who dearly loved the first few Paper Mario games precisely because of how creative they were. I liked them because they were so weird and interesting. And yet, it seemed that Nintendo didn't like that. They thought that was literally a bad thing. It seemed that, at least in some cases, Mario being bland was literally mandated. But while this was disturbing, it was also confusing. In the very first year of the Switch's life, we got Super Mario Odyssey, which seemed to break a lot of these weird rules. It was filled with fun and interesting races. Mario could ditch his classic outfit for a number of silly costumes. The game was bursting with creativity. And if a mainline Mario game was allowed to be creative, why wasn't everything? I feel like any mainline Mario game should set the standard of what is possible. And then over the years, we've had other cases of Nintendo seeming to break their own rules. For a long time, it felt like Mario Strikers was another anomaly they were never gonna repeat. It was so different from every other Mario game on a visual level, and then it also had this whole, edgier attitude thing to it. I wouldn't have been surprised if Nintendo never returned to the series. But, lo and behold, they did! The Switch has had lots of interesting looking and feeling Mario titles. Bowser's Fury is another good example. It was built off of 3D World, and yet it was so much more visually interesting, so much more creative and weird. It had its own unique identity that set it apart. But the dreaded Mario blandness still persisted. It lurked like a beast in the shadows. It was something that haunted certain series, something that could pop up and attack at any time. And hey, maybe bland is a bit of a harsh word, but it feels fitting to me. Classic snapshot Mario is nice, but it's bland. It's a flavorless version of Mario. It's by the numbers. It's Mario's bones without anything to flesh it out. Paper Mario did end up getting less and less bland with each title, and that was good. But what about 2D Mario? Nintendo was taking their sweet time giving us a new one. We knew the day would eventually come, but when it did, would we get another new title? And more importantly, would it be bland? Even after waiting for so long, would it end up being just as bland as the others? I shudder to think. But then one day, something incredible happened. Something wonderful, if you will. Nintendo revealed Super Mario Bros. Wonder. And this is not bland. In fact, it is the opposite of bland, this is a Mario game that seems to be going out of its way to make Mario interesting again. It's trying so hard to not just be another new title. The whole thing is one big constant stream of fun visuals and surprising mechanics. Weirder than anything though, Mario and his friends are now stylized. They have a look to them that is entirely unique to this game. And that might not seem like a big deal, but if you've been following Mario and all his weird creative limitations, you will know that how characters look means everything. And not even just with Mario, but any big media franchise. Characters have got to follow a very strict visual quote-unquote Bible. Consistency is very, very important. And Mario's 2D games have been so bland for so long that seeing this new take on Mario in a 2D game, of all things, that's a big deal. I mean, nothing is more Mario than 2D Mario. Nothing is more pure, more sacred. And that is why I think Nintendo was so hesitant to do anything really interesting with it for such a long time. But here you go. It's happening. This is a new 2D Mario, and it is stylish and interesting. The reveal of Mario Wonder already pushed me to make this exact video, but I kept putting it off for one reason or another. You know, things just kind of slip through the cracks sometimes, and boy, am I glad that I did put it off. Because the most recent Direct gave us another chapter in this saga. And if 2D Mario and Paper Mario were the two series most affected by this curse of blandness, it was now the latter's turn to break free of that curse. The ability to play Thousand Year Door on modern hardware is huge. Not having to pay exorbitant secondhand prices, having the convenience of playing on Switch, the fancy new graphics, that's all amazing. But Thousand Year Door getting remade is so much more than just us getting a cool game. Nintendo not only acknowledging the game, but actually selling us a new version of it is one of the biggest developments, if not the biggest development, we have ever seen in the realm of Mario and creativity. Origami King taught us that Paper Mario has to follow all these rules, but Thousand Year Door breaks every single one of those rules. It's filled with weird new races that don't belong in any other Mario game, and classic Mario races that are visually altered in loads of ways and even given names. It is everything Paper Mario has not been allowed to be for a decade. One could definitely argue that Super Mario RPG is kind of the same, though part of me wondered if they thought maybe that didn't quite count because it was such an old game, if that makes sense. You know, like, oh, it's a classic, it was on Super NES. That's different. It's not part of a series that's still going. It was still a really big deal, and it definitely played into this eventual video, but I didn't know if its existence necessarily meant anything or if it was just kind of a one and done deal, you know? But both Mario RPG and Thousand Year Door, though? No, that ain't random. That ain't just some simple remakes to help pad out the schedule. If Nintendo is willing to give us this game again, I can't help but wonder if this is a rare exception to the rules, or if maybe, just maybe, the rules are getting chucked in the trash where they belong. Get out of here, rules! Both Thousand Year Door and Mario Wonder really paint a brighter future for Mario. The curse of blandness might truly be a thing of the past. We can't be sure, of course. Nintendo seems to confusingly change their philosophies from title to title. You never know what they're gonna do. I mean, heck, Paper Mario had these rules in 2020, but like, they don't now? Is that them being more creatively flexible, or is that them just being inconsistent? But I'm trying to hold out hope that things just might be different now. Things move slowly at big companies like Nintendo. You know, attitudes, they slowly shift. I think the GameCube era saw Nintendo experimenting a lot. There were clearly zero rules. Developers had way more creative leeway. Then Nintendo decided to tighten things up. You know, try to preserve Mario in the way that Disney might preserve Mickey Mouse. And the Wii was such a big success, and they were trying so hard to be a household brand name, and I think they just went a little too far with it. We had a period of time where some Mario titles were plenty creative, but too many were bland. But the Switch itself has been a very interesting time for Nintendo. We saw their attitudes shift going into the generation, and I think they continued to shift throughout the life of the system. I like to think that what we're seeing now is a balancing of the two halves of Mario. The one half that wants to be safe and nostalgic and approachable, and the half that wants to be creative and experimental and interesting. They're finally finding that sweet spot. I mean, I feel Super Mario Odyssey in particular struck a perfect balance. Nothing so weird that it didn't feel like a Mario game, but just enough creativity and story stuff to be engaging. It proved that you can indeed have your cake and eat it too. But what about you? Do you think that Mario's curse of blandness has finally been broken? Do games like Super Mario Bros. Wonder and Thousand Year Door signal a massive shift in Mario's creative capabilities? Was there never really any sort of mandate one way or the other, and it's always just been a case-by-case kind of thing, and I'm looking way too deep into things? Please let me know how you feel down in the comments. Also, let me know what you use to spice up your Mario games when they're a little too bland. I'm a salt, pepper, and buffalo mayonnaise kind of guy myself.